All right, good morning. Well, Pastor Barb is away at preteen retreat with Cheyenne, and they're having a great time. They'll be back here this afternoon, but I'm glad that they're here. So you have to put up with me more than once today. That's awesome. You don't realize what a blessing that is for you. I mean, for me, I'm sorry. I get my tongue tied behind my eye teeth, can't see what I'm saying. Tonight is a very special day. Tonight is our trunk or treat tonight, and if you would like, we need you to join us because others that have been part of us are gone for this weekend, so we need some extra cards. So if you have like 2 or 3 cards, bring them, and we'll just fill them with candy. That'd be great. We'll find somebody to stick there by your trunk. Tonight at 4 o'clock, and if you can have a car here by 3:30, that would be great. And then Brother John has been working all week downstairs and got the maze. We'll have the amazing maze again this year, which would be awesome. And some chili, and all the instructions about the chili, Diane, we need to. You got that all figured out?
And I didn't put any flavor to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's awesome. That's awesome. Anyway, it's going to be a great evening, so you don't want to miss it tonight. And it'll probably be our last night to have any decent weather, because I heard this week is going to get some watch stuff. I'm not looking forward to that, but that's going to be, so we're going to get ahead of that tonight. That's great. Awesome. And the Turkey Trot is a fundraiser for the Thanksgiving offering for missions next Saturday, November 2nd, 10 o'clock to noon. Walking laps around the church parking lot, and you can get sponsors for that. There's sign-up sheets out there on the Welcome Center, so sponsor sheets out there if you would get that. And if you have any questions, see Patsy. She can be able to answer those questions for you about that for next Saturday. Also, Dwell, it's called Dwell, which is a ladies' event. It's a worship experience for women that's going to happen this coming Friday night, November 1st. Friday night from 7 to 9 at Central Church. That's on here somewhere. And the ladies from here, there's several ladies that are going to be meeting at Arby's at 5:30 or meet here at the church at 6:15 to carpool together and go down to Central Church for that event Friday night, this coming Friday night from 7 to 9. So you'll want to be a part of that. Awesome. Also, there's a wedding shower for Sarah Trent. I think that's been included. Sarah and Aaron getting married then December the 8th. So November 3rd, Saturday, 3 o'clock here at the church downstairs this Saturday for a wedding shower for Sarah downstairs. So you want to be sure to be a part of that. Also, an important event. Timmy, oh there it is, Timmy. Breakaway for our youth event. Breakaway is an all-youth event coming up on November the 15th. It's an all-nighter, so Timmy and Abby's going to help him. Thomas is going to go along. So if we have any extra teens that would like to go, we need you to go. Then please see Timmy, see myself. The cost is $35. You got some scholarships to cover some of those that can't afford that. We got some scholarship to cover that. So that's coming up on the 15th. Yes, that's on my list here, but it was the last thing down here. Audrey Landers is here on the 10th of November. So our missions, we sent her. She was here a little over a year ago before she went to Africa. She was here telling us about her experience and gave out some T-shirts. So she did a really good job. Now she's back. She's going to come and give us a report of what she did there So that's going to be an exciting time also. So you'll want to remember these. A lot of things happen, and that's always good. So, but tonight's the most important thing first, right? Because it's coming up first. So tonight, from 4 to 6, our trunk or treat in the amazing maze downstairs in our children down there. So, all right. If our ushers will come, please, at this time. Whoa. What's that?
One more pastor appreciation tree.
Oh, that's not important.
Don't do that.
That's not important.
It's very important. This is not my Halloween costume. I'm not going as a basic white girl. It's just my clothes. I went to the Lawrence Walmart yesterday, and I saw 4 people. I didn't know if it was their clothes or a costume. Maybe it was a banana or just her clothes, and there were several. One guy was Beetlejuice. He had these Beetlejuice pants on. I'm like, are you dressed up? I didn't say that. It was just their clothes. But anyways, I just thought I'd share that with y'all. Okay, so we, of course, we've had the basket and everything all month. But we thought, just to finalize this, say goodbyes to October and Pastor Appreciation Month. I hope if you guys have picked up anything out of all of these speeches that I made, is that Pastor Appreciation Month is every month! I hope that you will think of the hard work that our pastors and leadership do all throughout the year. And hope you don't wait until next October to show them how much you appreciate them. So, just to finalize it, we did get you a little plaque, little thing you can put on your desk or in your office. And I picked this verse because I thought it was very appropriate for what you've been going through health-wise. It says, "May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord turn his face upon you and give you peace." And so I just really like that. Of all of them, I picked this one. So we just want to say thank you for everything you've done. So come on down.
Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we want to pray for our pastor and his family, Lord, and all those who work in the church, Lord. Father, but we appreciate our shepherd, Lord, because he is the one that leads us. He doesn't drive us, he pushes, he leads. And it is his voice that we hear. And Father, we want you to continue to bless him, guide him as you are his shepherd, Lord, that he might be the best that you would have him be, Lord. So touch him both spiritually and physical, Lord. And Lord, just, once again, all we can do is ask you to bless him, Lord. And we do it in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. We have experienced and felt your love and support. We appreciate it so much. Really, we don't say it often enough, but I am grateful for each of you. Praise the Lord that you're in my life and our life. If our ushers will come, because I need some money. No. Not for me. It's not for me at all. This is our regular tithes and offerings that we give liberally and cheerfully unto the Lord. If our ushers come to receive the offering at this time. Lord, we just pray that you would bless the offering today, that you would bless each one that gives, and those who have not give as well. Would you multiply our gifts, make them accessible to you, Lord, I pray, that the furtherance of your kingdom and the furtherance of your cause. We ask this in Jesus' strong name. Amen.
Let our praise be your welcome. Let our songs be a sign. We are here for you. We are here for you. Let your
in terrifying blows against Egypt and Pharaoh and all his people. He brought us out of Egypt so he could give us this land he had sworn to give our ancestors. And the Lord our God commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear him, so he can continue to bless us and preserve our lives, as he has done to this day. For we will be counted as righteous when we obey all the commands the Lord our God has given us.
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this hurt, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from his ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. I really believe that is true. When we come from the dust, and we originally, and then God is continuously forming us if we allow that. So I'm so thankful that we have a creator. We have someone who, no matter what happens in our life, we can say, God, I trust your plan. I give myself to you. And remember that. He makes beautiful things out of us, no matter where we've been, what we've done,
Feel the Spirit's presence with us this morning. God is in the house. He's here for a reason. He's here to make us like Him in heart, mind, soul, and life. The problem is many of us let different things get in the way. Anxieties, worries, fears, issues of the body, maybe what we might call afflictions or burdens. This morning, as every Sunday, you know the altar's open. If you have an affliction in your life, if you have a burden in your life, I don't care what it is, God knows. God cares. I invite you to come to the altar this morning and, like the old song says, take it to the Lord in prayer and bask in the grace of His glory and His healing. Let's bow our heads. Lord, we know in your word there was a day when Israel was no more. The invaders came, they knocked down the walls, they kicked in the gates, they oppressed and enslaved your people. They heaped on them afflictions and burdens beyond imagination, and it was a horrible time. Heartbroken, the prophet, all he could do was look on the disaster and write down what was in his heart, mind, and soul, and we call that book Lamentations today. He said our lives were once brighter than snow, but now they're blacker than soot. And his first prayer was, "O Lord, from the depths of our pit, do not close your ears to our cry." And the joyous thing is, in the book called Lamentations comes a magical, marvelous, powerful voice that says, "Do not fear. I am with you." Oh Lord, for those words we praise you today, because we also have darkness and blackness in our lives. We have burdens, we have afflictions that feel like they're going to crush us and destroy us. And Lord, often we lift our hearts toward the ceiling and we cry out, "God, help!" And our souls are downcast within us, and we're just ready to give up and throw in the towel and walk away and or just die. But then in the middle of our lamentations comes the most wonderful message. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. Because of the Lord's great love, His compassion toward us never fails. His love and compassion for us are renewed every morning.
Oh God, help that sink into us. Let it get into our minds the way we think. Let it get into our hearts the way we feel and how we are in our lives. But let us remember that whatever we're facing, whatever we're going through, whatever the affliction upon us, whatever our burden today, God's love and compassion are renewed to us this morning and tomorrow morning and Tuesday morning and every morning. So we can cry out with Jeremiah, the Lord is my portion. And even in my disaster, I will wait for him, for he is good to me. Lord, your promise is that you are good to those whose hope is in you, to those who seek you. So here we are, Lord, putting our hope in you, seeking you. And in this moment of prayer, our souls are waiting quietly before you. For your grace, for your glory, for your power, for your healing, for your compassion, for your love. So Lord, today turn your eyes upon us and bring us your healing power. Lord, as one saint shared with me some time ago, today we come to you in your goodness, Lord, with this prayer. Renew us, restore us, reclaim us as your own. Cause us to live in your joy, in your grace, in your peace, and in your love. For today, as your people, we wait for you. Touch and move and change and transform everyone in this room, Lord. Before we leave this place, let us be incrementally or gargantuanly made more like you. Come now, Holy Spirit, have your way with us. Don't just minister to us, Lord. Transform us, fill us, empower us, enable us, and love us. Make us your people. Make us your body. Make us your church. For your glory. And in Jesus' name I pray. All people said, amen.
Pastor, here I am again. And I said to myself, you're going to be quiet next Sunday morning. We sang a song, these beautiful things out of us. You don't know what a burden that took out of my heart this morning. I don't know how to say this without bringing laughter, but the remains of John is in the closet, and he'll be getting out of the closet in spring. But that's not him. He is the beautiful thing that God made from that what's left. That wasn't my heart, and it answers a question. I don't care about that now. It bothers me a little bit. But I don't care, because that is what that beautiful man was in my life. And I just can't be quiet about it. So forgive me, everyone. I tried. But I don't know. I guess I got the gift of gab.
We're thankful for you, Sarah Jane. Absolutely thankful for you. Praise the Lord. And it's true. It's true. God does make beautiful things. Out of people and out of things that happen to us and around us, God makes beautiful things. Amen. Well, I invite you this morning to turn in your Bibles or whatever device you have your Bible on, to open it to Luke's Gospel, chapter 18. We were in the first several verses last week, and we're going to pick up at verse 9 this week. Luke chapter 18, beginning at verse 9. And if you will just leave it open there, we'll get to that, and we'll get back to that shortly, I promise. But before we do that, let's recite our motto together, shall we? All together. Heavenly Father, I give you permission to speak to me, to speak through me, to do whatever you want with my life. I trust the leadership of your Holy Spirit. Amen? So let me ask you a question this morning, and I know you probably get tired because that seems like all I ever do is ask questions. But that's how I learned. We ask questions, right? And anytime we stop asking questions, we're in trouble. So I ask you a question. And I want to ask you a tough question this morning. How many of you have been accused of being a poor listener? Well, I see a couple of you like that. Yeah. You've been accused of being a poor listener, or maybe I should call it selective listener. I fit into that category. Selective listener. Ask my wife; she'd be glad to tell you that I'm a selective listener. We hear what we want to hear, right? I don't hear any amens. I see a couple of heads nodding, but that's all right. We hear what we want to hear. You see, most of us have been guilty of this at one time or another. And maybe, I think, it's because we're easily distracted. Right? We're easily distracted. I was reading some stories from Tom Rainer. I love Tom Rainer, publisher Tom Rainer. He has collected stories over the years from his pastor friends of some of the strangest distractions they've dealt with while preaching. For example, one pastor said he had a bat fly in to the sanctuary during his sermon. Another church, a small child kicked off their tennis shoe and it landed right beside the pastor while he was preaching. Distraction. Probably the strangest distraction Rainer remembers was when a church custodian polished up the wooden pews in the sanctuary, making them too slippery for people to sit on. And throughout the service, the pastor kept preaching as his members slid this way and that, and actually fell off the well-oiled pews right onto the floor. I remember, over 20 years ago, I pastored over in Independence, Missouri, and in our church there, actually 3 times at the church, we were robbed right in the middle of the service. And in one of those occasions, you're talking about a distraction, it was really a distraction. And in one of those occasions, they came and stood right in the middle part. We had a middle aisle there, and right in the center, in front of the pulpit area, and they had a shotgun and shot it. And to this day, way up in the ceiling are the pellets for that shotgun shot. And they got our attention really quick. Lined us all up around the sanctuary and took jewelry and money and whatever they could. That's a little distracting. It happened. It just does. My dad, one time, and it's been a long time ago, back down in West Palm Beach, Florida, he was preaching away and trying to make an extra point. He was kicking his leg and his shoe came off and it went straight up and made a big old mark on the ceiling up there. And it's still there. Distracting. It happened. And you remember here, several years ago, our own poor Miss Rosemary Miley suffered a heart attack in the middle of the church service on this side. You remember the ambulance people had to come in, we had to scoot chairs away, and had to get in there to her. A little distracting. Remember? Distractions happen.
Connie.
And Connie, yes, Connie, you remember not too long ago, she was sitting over here on this section and just she fell asleep. And she just fell out of her chair right there on the floor. Got our attention. Those kinds of distractions can affect the most devout listener and even the speaker. Can distract us. There are all kinds of reasons communications break down. Maybe we have trouble listening to others because we're tired or stressed out. You thought about that? Just maybe Maybe it's because we're too tired and stressed out. Maybe we just don't care enough about others to pay close attention to them. Maybe. We've all been guilty of being a bad listener at one time or another, right? We have. Be honest. And this may have been why Jesus spoke in parables as much as he did so often. Because he knew that we are easily distracted. He knew that we have our own agendas. And he knew that sometimes our ego gets in the way of hearing God's voice. Sometimes our ego gets in the way of hearing God's voice. Max Dunham, a professor emeritus of the Asbury Theological Seminary, an excellent writer, but he likes to tell the story of the University of Tennessee football coach, the Volunteers football coach, who bought a bolt of cloth. And I know the women folk know what a bolt of cloth is, but it's that what is it, 3 feet so, and it's a little thing, and this cloth is wrapped around it. That's a bolt of cloth. You go to, I've been enough to Joann's Fabrics to know. But he bought this bolt of cloth, the University of Tennessee football coach, and he decided he wanted to have a suit made out of this cloth. So he took the material to his tailor. The tailor measured him, examined the bolt of cloth, and did some computations on a piece of paper. And then he said, "Well, I'm sorry, Coach. There just isn't enough material in this bolt to make a suit for you." The coach was disappointed, but he threw the bolt of cloth in the trunk of his car, wondering what he was going to do with it. Just threw it in there and forgot about it. A few weeks later, he was on, the coach, Tennessee coach, was on his way through Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And you know Alabama is the home of the Crimson Tide, arch enemies of the Tennessee Vols. Even though he wasn't there for the football game, he was on his way to take a few days off with his family. And driving down the main street in Tuscaloosa, he noticed a tailor shop, which reminded him that he still had that bolt of cloth in the trunk of his car. So he stopped, thinking he would give it a try, at least with this tailor. So he told the tailor that he bought this bolt of cloth and wondered if he could do anything with it, that he wanted a suit made. The tailor measured him, measured the bolt of cloth, did some computations, and finally he said, "Coach, I can make you a suit out of this bolt of cloth. What's more, I can even make you an extra pair of pants. And to top it off, if you want, I can even add you a vest to go along with this suit and extra pair of pants." Well, the coach was dumbfounded. He said, "I don't understand. My tailor in Knoxville told me he couldn't even make one suit out of this bolt of cloth." The tailor said, "Well, Coach, let me just tell you. Here in Tuscaloosa, you're not nearly as big a man as you think you are." Just reminded me that we all like to think we're a big man or a big woman in certain arenas, right? Don't we? And it's no fun when our ego trip gets derailed. It's no fun, is it? When you have to swallow your own pride. Imagine how Jesus' listeners felt in our Bible passage today. This parable would have been shocking to them, actually mind-blowing to them. And let's just hope and pray that their big egos don't get in the way of them hearing and understanding it. And let's hope and pray that our big egos don't prevent us from hearing it and understanding it today. Are you ready? Let's look at it. Luke chapter 18, beginning at verse 9. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I have. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but he beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And Jesus said, I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So did you catch how he started this? It starts with these words, verse 9. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. You know, every parable Jesus told was an opportunity. An opportunity to understand God better. An opportunity to understand God better. An opportunity to conform our lives to the image of God. An opportunity to turn away from our sin and get a fresh start in life. So what did Jesus want to teach his hearers with this story? And what does he want to teach us today? What is it he's teaching us? Well, number one, first of all, Jesus wanted them to know that when we compare ourselves to others, we turn religion into a competition. When we compare ourselves to others, we turn religion into a competition. So Jesus wanted his hearers to understand that they were wasting their lives and missing out on the truth of God by looking down on others because of their religion. I know you've heard me say this before, but let me just remind you, and this is something I would stamp on your mind somehow if I could, or stamp it on your forehead. God is not about religion.
Amen.
But about relationships.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
We have too much religion in our world. I'm not interested in any more religion, are you? We've had enough religion. God is not about religion. God is about relationships.
Amen.
You see, it's a mistake to define ourselves by what we are not instead of by who God is. It's a mistake to identify or define ourselves by what we are or what we are not instead of who God is. We were made in the image of God. And if we accept Jesus Christ as our Savior, we are adopted into God's family and we are children of God. Amen. Plain and simple. So our identity is not based on comparing ourselves to others. Our identity is not even based on our right actions, the way we act. Our identity is based on who God is. And the Bible says that God is holy, holy, holy. That's who we compare it to. And let me just throw something else out there to you. Self-righteousness is not the same thing as holiness. Self-righteousness is not the same thing as holiness. In fact, it's quite the opposite of that. Well, I could go on, right? But we've got this story in front of us. The Pharisee made the mistake of comparing himself to other people. What did he say? God, I thank you, I'm not like other people. We can all do that, right? In fact, maybe we do that. And in comparison, we don't look too bad. Right? Really, when you start adding things up, really don't look all that bad. And the Pharisee did look good compared to the tax collector. The Pharisees were members of a strict religious sect. They devoted their lives to observing the rules and statutes of the Jewish religious law. They were the gold standard for righteousness in their society. The Pharisees, they were the gold standard for righteousness. And then here's this tax collector, on the other hand, was a traitor to his own people because he worked for the Roman government in a capacity that allowed him to cheat and oppress his fellow Jews by adding on extra taxes to line his own pockets. The profession encouraged corruption, actually. Tax collectors were considered traitors and extortionists. They weren't allowed to be witnesses or judges in court because they were considered untrustworthy. They were excommunicated from the synagogue. So the Pharisee, he thought he was all right in comparison to this tax collector. He thought he was wonderful compared to the tax collector. The only thing is, the tax collector wasn't who he was in competition with. And he didn't know it. We're not in competition with each other, my friends. And sometimes we're not even aware of it. We have our heads buried. You see, this Pharisee's competition was the man he himself was created to be. That was his competition. The Pharisee's prayer showed that there was this gaping hole in his life that he didn't really know God. He didn't really know God. And that's a sad and very scary truth, isn't it? We can do everything right in life, keeping all the rules of our religion, and still not know God. I've been guilty of it myself. I've seen over and over, many people can quote me the manual, can quote me the Bible. They know all the rules, but they don't know God. Why? Because they don't have a relationship with God. They have a religion. They don't have a relationship with God. You see, remember, God is not about religion. He's about relationships. Remember that? And when we compare ourselves to others, we turn our religion into a competition and away from the relationship with God. That's the first thing. Number two, the second thing Jesus is trying to teach us here is when we compare ourselves to God rather than others, then we realize we don't have anything to offer Him. When we compare ourselves to God rather than others, we realize we have nothing to offer Him. What does the tax collector in this parable do? Have you noticed? Look at it. He doesn't even look up to heaven when he prays. Instead, he looks down at the ground and he beats his chest in sorrow. And he prays simply, verse 13, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. God, have mercy on me, a sinner. This tax collector compared himself to a holy, holy God, and he knew he had absolutely nothing to offer. I think the tax collector identified with King David, who wrote the words in Psalm 51, verse 17. My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. You, God, will not despise. I think this tax collector understood the Psalm of David. A few years ago, a famous physicist was giving a lecture at Princeton University, and there were a number of preachers in the audience. And during the question and answer session, one of the preachers asked, what is it that ministers could learn from scientists? And without hesitation, Dr. Peebles, the physicist, said, humility. Humility. Oh, that's a surprising answer, the questioner, the person said. I thought all scientists were rather arrogant in all that they knew. The physicist, Dr. Peeble, said, no, oh no. You may have met one here and there, but the great scientists, he said, are all very humble people because they stand every morning before the mystery of all they do not know. And if anyone should be that humble, it would be the minister who every morning stands before the mystery of the Creator and Sustainer and Redeemer of the world. Wow. If anyone should be humble, it would be those of us who every morning stand before the mystery of the Creator and Sustainer and the Redeemer of the world. Let me just throw something else out to you this morning. You cannot know God, or you cannot know who God is, and still hold on to your pride and self-righteousness. You cannot know who God is and still hold on to your pride and self-righteousness. Remember, I said self-righteousness is not the same thing as holiness. It's the opposite. Author Philip Yancey writes about being invited to speak at a conference on ministry to women in prostitution. And at the end of his talk, Philip Yancey asked the women, "Did you know that Jesus referred to your profession?" He asked them. He said, "Let me just read you what he said." And he read these words. "I tell you the truth, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are entering the kingdom of God ahead of you." He was speaking of the religious authorities of his day. And what do you think Philip Yancey was asking this group of women, what do you think Jesus meant by that? Why did he single out prostitutes? After several minutes of silence, a young woman from Eastern Europe spoke up in her broken English, and she said, "Everyone has someone to look down on, but not us. We are at the low. Our families, they feel shame for us. No mother nowhere looks at her little girl and says, 'Honey, when you grow up, I want you to be a good prostitute.' Believe me," she said, "we know how people feel about us. People call us names, and sometimes when you're at the low, you cry for help. So when Jesus comes, we respond." Maybe Jesus meant that. Wow. Did you hear what she was saying? Sometimes when you're at the low, you cry for help. So when Jesus comes, we respond. Maybe that's what Jesus meant. Perhaps. Just perhaps. So the tax collector was at the low, and he cried to God for help. And in fact, the Greek word translated here to be merciful in the tax collector's prayer is actually the word for an atoning sacrifice. An atoning sacrifice. That's the actual word here. So this tax collector's prayer is, "God, be the atoning sacrifice for me, a sinner. Be merciful. Be the atoning sacrifice for me." Some of you have read after C.S. Lewis, I know, but in C.S. Lewis's fantasy story called The Great Divorce, a busload of people from hell are driven to the gates of heaven and offered admission. But with one exception, they all refuse it. The people in heaven are so radiant and so substantial that they make hell look like mere shadows. One pale ghost from hell wanders through the gates into heaven, and he's upset when he meets another citizen in heaven that he used to know in his previous life. And this heavenly citizen had worked for him and had not been a very good person. In fact, he had committed a murder during his time on earth. So this pale ghost was saying, how dare he live in heaven now? He hadn't earned that right. The citizen from hell complains, look at me now. I've gone straight all my life. I don't say I was a religious man. I don't say I had no faults, far from it. But I've done my best all my life. That's the sort of chap I was. I never asked for anything that wasn't mine, my rights. If I wanted to drink, I paid for it. If I took my wages, I'd done my job. See?
I'm asking for nothing but my rights. I'm not asking for anybody's bleeding charity. And the heavenly citizen looks at him in the eye and says, maybe you should accept the bleeding charity. Ask for it. Ask for it. Do it now, he said. That story, it just reminds me of this tax collector, because the tax collector here is asking for the bleeding charity. The tax collector is asking for the bleeding charity, and God gives it to him. That's the way it works. And Jesus finishes his parable with these words, verse 14. I tell you, he said, that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What does that mean? He went home justified. What does that mean? It means his sins were forgiven. His sins were forgiven. And he got exactly what he asked for. Mercy. He got mercy from a holy, holy God who knows that we can never be holy enough to deserve his mercy. He asked for the bleeding sacrifice, and he got exactly what he asked for. So God sent his perfect, sinless Son, Jesus, to take away the penalty of our sins and to make us right in his eyes. And that brings me to the third, final point of this parable. Number 3, if you don't know grace, you don't know God. Because grace, the unearned gift of God's love and salvation through Jesus Christ, was God's plan for us from the very beginning. If you don't know grace, you don't know God. Because grace, which is the unearned gift of God's love and salvation, was God's plan right from the very beginning. Pastor David Lose writes about the Pharisee. He said, while he's right about the kind of life you should live, he's confused about the source of that life. The tax collector knows the one thing the Pharisee didn't know. That his life is God's. His past, present, and future are entirely dependent on God's grace and mercy.
Amen.
The Pharisee didn't know that. The tax collector did. The tax collector knew the one thing the Pharisee did. His life is God's. Every part of it. And it totally, entirely depends on God's grace and mercy. In his book entitled Proof, Timothy Paul Jones writes about his middle daughter who is adopted. She had been adopted before, but her adopted family gave her up and put her back into the foster system. And for some reason, the previous family had not treated this little girl like she was truly their child. Whenever they went to Disney World, they took all their biological children but left her behind. And she got the message that she wasn't wanted, wasn't good enough to earn a gift like Disney World. She wasn't a full member of the family. So when Timothy Paul Jones and his family adopted this little girl, she had a lot of behavioral outbursts, as you can imagine. The Jones family decided that the best way to welcome this little girl into their family was to plan a trip to Disney World. And when they told their new daughter, her behavior problems multiplied. She lied, she stole food, she treated her new siblings badly, cruelly. No matter what system of punishment or reward that the Joneses used, their adopted daughter's behavior was just completely out of control. This little girl was so afraid of not getting to Disney World that she was trying to guarantee her new parents would have a reason to leave her behind. The day finally came for their trip. The family went all out. Rides and refreshments and long lines and exhaustion. You know how it goes. They finally collapsed in their hotel room that night. Timothy Paul Jones said he asked his new daughter what she thought of the experience. She crawled up next to him and smiled and said, "Daddy, I finally got to go to Disney World. But it wasn't because I was good. It's because I'm yours."
Amen.
I finally got to go to Disney World, but it wasn't because I was good. It's because I belong to you. And that's the message today. That's the message of outrageous grace. Outrageous grace isn't a favor that you can achieve by being good. It's a gift you receive by being God's child.
Amen.
That's outrageous grace. You have been bestowed with outrageous grace. And it's not because you deserve it. It's not because I deserve it. It's because we belong to Him.
Amen.
We've asked for the bleeding charity, and He gives it to us. He gives us His mercy. He said, "No, you don't deserve it. You don't belong here. But my blood has been applied to you, and so my blood makes you belong."
Amen.
The Pharisee missed out on the gift of God's outrageous grace because he thought he could do something to earn it. He didn't want any bleeding charity. He wanted to be good enough. He was comparing himself to those around him. But the tax collector compared himself to God, and he cried out for mercy. My friends, this morning, if you don't know the gift of outrageous grace, then you don't know God. Because our salvation is not about our goodness, but about God's grace.
Amen.
It's not about us being good. It's about His goodness, His grace, His love being poured out. It's not about our religion. It's about our relationship with God. And so I have to ask, how's your relationship with God today? How is your relationship with God today? Is it up to date? It's not like, well, yeah, I accepted God back when, and you can point back, yeah. But is it up to date? Do you talk to Him every day? Is it a daily activity that you are in communication with God? How's your relationship with God today? That's the question. I'm so glad it's not about my religion. Aren't you? It's not about religion. It's about our relationship with God. And when that relationship is in place, everything else falls into its proper place. That's why that's most important. Would you just bow your heads? You're here this morning. You're saying, Pastor, these words spoke to me today. God is speaking to me today. And I do want to accept this bleeding charity. And I have made it all about my religion instead of my relationship with God. I don't know if you are saying that. Maybe you're somewhere in there. But you really haven't experienced this outrageous grace that God would like to give you. He wants you to experience it. And so before we go, just while we're sitting here in our seat, no one looking around. We're not here to embarrass anybody. That's not why we're here. But if the Lord is speaking to you and dealing with your heart, and you just say, yes, that applies to me, would you just slip your hand up and let it right back down? And that just says, Pastor, please pray for me. I see that hand. I see those. I see. Thank you. You see that? Yes, thank you. I see those. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I see that. Again, thank you. I see that. Praise God. May I just encourage you, even at some point today, to find a place, take the time to make sure your relationship with God is in the right place. And remember the story of the little girl in Disney World, that it's not because we deserve it. It's because we belong to Him. We're His. And He wants you to experience His grace. He wants you to. Let's pray. Dear God, as we gather as people who long to be faithful, we confess this morning that our longing comes a whole lot more easily than our faithfulness. And although we sense your presence within us and among us, we often acknowledge your grace grudgingly, or we receive it very clumsily. So I ask, Lord, today, or we ask, that you would enable us to become an ever more graceful people. And help us to bear witness to your grace through the acceptance and compassion that we show toward each other. And encourage us to rely upon your grace as the basis for everything we do. And help us not to be guilty of comparing ourselves to each other, but only comparing ourselves to you, God. And when we do that, we realize we don't stack up very well. We realize we absolutely have nothing to offer. So Lord, forgive us, I pray. When the faith we practice places primary trust in our human inventions and powers and systems, and I pray that you would strengthen us to live a bold faith that instead places ultimate trust in your potent love and amazing grace. I ask. This outrageous grace. So great and powerful God, in our struggle to rely upon your grace in the formation of our values and commitments, we discover our own reluctance to entrust ourselves entirely to you. Forgive us, I pray, and receive our confession as a reaching out toward you, toward your guidance and toward your correction, to accept your outrageous grace and love and mercy. We ask for the bleeding charity today, down deep in us. For we must admit, we have fallen into bad habits. We define success as the ability to accumulate goods and power rather than as the capacity to be generous with ourselves and substance. We measure people's value by what they produce, and we neglect to accept them for who they are. We look out for our own vested interest instead of investing ourselves in faithful stewardship of all of our resources. We permit our possessions to possess us. Forgive us, Lord. May we truly experience your outrageous grace. Now create within us a sense of spiritual balance that gives us stability to our steps as we walk the challenging path of discipleship, I pray. that we will no longer be the same, but we will be changed into who you have created us to be. Because that's our only competition, is who you have created us to be, that we live up to that. And we can't do it in our own strength, in our own power. We must have the help of the Holy Spirit. We must have your help in us. And you've promised it. Help us to put it to use. I pray this in Jesus' strong name. Amen. Would you stand, please, and receive the benediction this morning? Brothers and sisters in Christ, a joy again to be with you, to worship together in spirit. I'm grateful for each of you. And now, by the outrageous grace of God, may your minds grow rich in understanding. May your hearts achieve a wealth of compassion. May your bodies thrive. And may your spirits prosper. You are graced with the abundant love of God, the enriching example of Christ, the engaging power of the Holy Spirit. Rejoice in these things. Be grateful for the outrageous grace that's been bestowed upon us. And leave this place giving thanks that you are free to serve your God with gladness. And pass on the grace that's been given to you. And may the peace of Christ be with you all. Thank you. You are dismissed. God bless you.